Hello, everyone. It's 1 p.m. Eastern, and that means it's time to begin our 73rd CoCoRaHS Weather Talk webinar. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us today. I'm your host, meteorologist Henry Regis. Running the technical side of our program is our very own Noah Newman. We're coming to you live from sunny Fort Collins, Colorado. For those of you who are unable to join us for our live broadcast today, we are recording it and we'll have it available later this week on our website. All of our Weather Talk webinars are sponsored by the generous donations of listeners just like you. Well, today's webinar is on the commercial weather sector, innovation, its evolution in the great American weather enterprise. And we're very happy to have with us our guest today, Joel Myers, the founder, CEO, and chairman of AccuWeather, located in State College, Pennsylvania. Joel received his bachelor's, master's, and PhD from Penn State University, where he founded AccuWeather in 1962. Since then, he has successfully established the organization as one of the largest and fastest growing weather media companies, as well as a global leader in weather-related big data, business, and predictive analytics. Joel is known in the field as the father of modern commercial meteorology. Over his career, Joel has received many accolades, including the American Meteorological Society's 2018 Award for Outstanding Contributions to the Advancement of Applied Meteorology and the National Weather Association's 2017 Lifetime Achievement Award. He has published numerous papers in leading scientific journals, including Scientific American and the Journal of Applied Meteorology. Joel is considered one of the nation's most respected authorities on the business of meteorology. Well, apart from his weather interest, our Philadelphia native is an avid Penn State sports fan, longtime Philadelphia Phillies baseball fan, and he was a Philadelphia Athletics fan before that. He's rooted for the Pittsburgh Steelers for more than 50 years. Joel is also a coin collector and has a rare collection of over 320 antique barometers, some dating back to the late 1700s. Well, let's give a warm welcome to our friend from State College, Joel Myers. Joel, it's great to have you with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So two questions for you. One, I guess, is where do you hang all those barometers? That's a lot of barometers, 320. I assume in your office you've got places to do that, and that's quite the collection. What's the oldest one you have?
Well, I hang them, to answer the first question, here at my home. I have them in my study. I have them in my dining room and in my living room. I've got many in my office at AccuWeather, as well as in the outer office where my support people are, and a few around the building. The oldest one I have is from actually 1692. The barometer was invented by Torricelli, a student of Galileo, in 1644. So that's one of my pride and joy, but they're so different. They're pieces of furniture, they're scientific instruments, they're from different eras, different countries, Italy, France, the UK, Germany, and of course the United States, some famous barometer makers in New England, Boston, and so on. So it's interesting, and I always on the lookout for them whenever I travel. Even looked for them when I was in Japan, but I couldn't find any at all there.
Wow, well that's something. Maybe we can have you back at a future date and do a show on barometers. That would be really, really interesting. So the other question I have for you is, if I remember correctly, you started AccuWeather back in grad school. How did you come up with the AccuWeather name? What started that?
Well, it's a good question. So I started AccuWeather in 1962. It was under my name, Joel Myers, meteorological consultant. And when I finished my PhD, finally in September of 1971, it took a while because I was running AccuWeather in the winters, a winter service for ski areas and cities and counties for the snow clearance and so on. And finally finished my PhD doing research and teaching. But finally in September of 1971, I finished and was ready to start a radio and television service. So the radio station said, well, listen, we want you, we're convinced you're accurate, but we have this other service called Pinpoint Weather. And we need a better name than that. We know you're going to do better, but we also will need a brand that sounds better. So I came up with 3 names, and I met with the station. AccuWeather was at the top of the list because obviously the most important thing in weather forecasting is accuracy. And so they liked that. I liked it. And but having that first radio station really spurred the development of the name.
Wow, that's really neat. Hey, thanks for sharing that with us. Well, we're going to hand the controls over to you. And again, we look forward to this presentation.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and welcome everyone. Many of you are volunteer weather observers, and as such, you play a key part of the value chain of weather forecasting. I myself was a cooperative weather observer at the age of 14 in North Philadelphia. And I was told at the time I was the youngest weather observer, and I did that until I went off to Penn State at age 18. Then my younger brother, Barry, the former CEO of AccuWeather, who, as you may know, was nominated by President Trump to be head of NOAA, kept the observations for the next 4 years. When he followed me to Penn State, my youngest brother, Evan, who's current COO of AccuWeather, continued the tradition for 6 more years before he came to Penn State. In the well-known book, could we show the next slide? Thank you. In the well-known book, The Signal and the Noise, the noted statistical analyst Nate Silver examined forecasts of many categories and various types and found that most demonstrated little or no skill, and they have made virtually no progress in accuracy over the decades. The lone exception, he found, was the science of weather forecasting. I've been asked to talk today about innovations in the commercial sector, and so that'll be my main focus. However, the benefit of improved weather forecasting on human activity over the past 50 years by contributions of all sectors of the weather enterprise is hard to overstate. Let us begin by discussing how weather prediction became such a success story. Benjamin Franklin was the first to observe that northeastern storms, nor'easters, began in the Southwest. He proposed models to describe the progression of storm systems and published some of the first weather forecasts in the United States. During World War I, English mathematician Lewis Fry Richardson postulated that fluid dynamic equations could be used to forecast the state of the atmosphere. It took him months to calculate a 6-hour forecast by hand, only to get impossible results due to errors in his calculations. Of course, he was doing it all by hand, of course, but the mathematical approach was vindicated in the 1940s with the invention of computers. Since the 1970s, weather forecasting models have been run on the world's fastest, most powerful supercomputers, spurring advances in both computer technology, atmospheric physics, and also weather modeling. Up through World War II, weather forecasts were issued almost entirely by the federal government. The agency that issued them was called the US Weather Bureau. After the war, a few meteorologists who had left the military began offering customized forecasts to weather-sensitive businesses. Now, here you see a weather forecast, a typical forecast from the 50s and 60s, so I think from the New York Times, and they were limited in scope and accuracy, typically only covering today, tonight, and tomorrow, with few details and often missing major events. In those days, weather forecasters were often the butt of jokes and cartoons. The only job you could get paid for being wrong, they often said. Many meteorologists, including yours truly, were passionate and driven to improve the accuracy of forecasts and build respect for our trade. Before we continue with advances in weather forecasting, let me share some of my background. When I was 3 years old, if you see me there, I fell in love.
Dr. Myers, really quickly here, before we continue, actually, we've got a problem with the slideshow. It's not coming through properly. So give us 1 second while I try to, I'm gonna take off that screen for a second, and we're going to try to reset it for a second. And
Well, do you want me to start from the beginning? You didn't see any of the slides?
no, we saw the slides. There was just like some pixelation going on. There was so we're gonna see if we can reset them, and we'll let you go right back where you were momentarily. It's still showing up with some pixelation on the screen. There it goes.
There we go. It's gone.
Okay.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right.
You're
Yep.
back in business.
Okay. So before we continue with advances in weather forecasting, let me share some of my background. When I was 3 years old, and here you see me at about 3, I fell in love with snow. At 7, I decided to become a weather forecaster. When I was 11, I told my dad I was going to combine my burning desire to be a weather forecaster with my developing entrepreneurial spirit as a means of starting my own weather business. And over the past 6 decades, I've had the opportunity to serve in all 3 sectors of the great American weather enterprise: public, private, and academia. In 1954, I contacted the US Weather Bureau, now the National Weather Service, and offered them weather observations. Can we change the slide? Thank you. And offered them these observations from my house in North Philadelphia, which often had different snow amounts than the airport. At the time, observation points were few and far between compared to what's available now. As official cooperative observers, I and then my brothers would send in reports each month and call in our reports of rain and snowfall amounts, which were the only source of such observations in the northern part of the city, some 15 miles north of the airport. Now, I was at an elevation of 300 feet above sea level compared to the airport being virtually at sea level. And sometimes the differences were dramatic. Sometimes we'd get 2 or 3 times as much snow as they did there. I won the American Meteorological Society McElwaney Award as an undergraduate, writing about these variations in a paper entitled Snowfall Variations Across the City of Philadelphia. Between my junior and senior year in college in 1960, I was a summer intern at the US Weather Bureau. Nearly 70-year-old pictures you see here are of me at my homemade weather station and my brothers and me discussing the weather in my bedroom. And talk about the walls. My mother wasn't delighted to have all those maps all over the walls, but she let me do it. 2 days after arriving at the Pennsylvania State University, the only university I could afford, I convinced the city editor of the Daily Collegian to allow me to become the campus newspaper's first ever weather forecaster. And a few weeks later, I also began providing forecasts on the campus radio station, doing a broadcast each evening. This gave me valuable insight into how the media works at an early age. I was very fortunate that Penn State turned out to have one of the best meteorological programs in the world. I earned 3 degrees from Penn State, and beginning with my first year as a graduate student, I had the opportunity to teach the 400 level course in weather forecasting, and then taught that course continuously for the next 21 years. By the time I retired from teaching, it's estimated that I had trained 17% of the nation's active weather forecasters. As part of my faculty duties, next slide, please, for 18 years, I also did an 8-minute weather program on the statewide public television network. I started what was to become AccuWeather as a second-year graduate student in 1962 and introduced the AccuWeather name to the public in 1971 when we began forecasting for radio stations and then television stations. In addition to building the business, I also did regular afternoon radio broadcasts on major stations in Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., and various other cities. For 58 years, I have been blessed to run AccuWeather experiencing year-over-year growth during 55 of those 58 years. I'm extremely grateful to the people at Penn State and my mentor, Dr. Charles Hosler. I could not have developed AccuWeather without the great education, the special mentorship, and intellectual stimulation I received there, as well as the exceptional opportunities to teach and conduct research at Penn State. It also allowed me to hire my best students, resulting in a crucible of creativity, excellence at AccuWeather, where meteorologists with a unique purpose, dedication, and positive attitude feed off each other to create something great. Over my lifetime, I have seen incredible advances in the field of meteorology. This story of weather forecasting and many forecasting victories of severe weather underscores the clear result of Nate Silver's analysis and the triumph of meteorology compared to other types of forecasting. My presentation today is a tribute to each of the men and women in the public, educational, and private sectors of meteorology who have dedicated their careers to achieve this amazing progress. Together, we have saved tens of thousands of lives, benefited the global economy to the tune of trillions of dollars, and improved the quality of life for Americans and billions more around the world. As you know, the American weather enterprise consists of government, academia, and the commercial sectors. It has emerged from a relationship of mistrust and conflict in the 1990s and early 2000s to a much more cooperative partnership over the past 10 to 15 years, with each component having a better understanding of the value that they each bring to consumers. This progress, mediated by the American Meteorological Society, has led to new advances and efficiencies, thereby providing Americans with the world's best and most useful weather forecasts and warnings that have clearly demonstrated substantial savings of lives and property. Until recent decades, virtually all weather observational data came from government agencies. Today, commercial companies also provide unique data sets ranging from lightning, microsatellite data, drones, crowdsourcing, mesonettes, and in-vehicle sensors that are constantly updated in real time, stored and distributed via the internet and cloud technology. We have access to massive amounts of data, and AI and cloud technology are revolutionizing our ability to utilize great quantities of data to produce highly accurate and localized predictions. As data from all sources, private, academic, and public, continue to grow exponentially and computer models improve, weather forecasts and warnings will become even more accurate, more timely, and hyperlocal, and extend further ahead in the years ahead. Yet the hyperbolic rise in data and how to best access, store, process, analyze, display, and utilize it will be a challenge for all parts of the enterprise. In the future, and to some degree, even already today, the magnitude of this data will benefit society enormously as we correlate it to health, agriculture, supply chain, transportation, retail, and virtually every business, becoming more refined in terms of minute by minute and kilometer by kilometer resolution, concepts that were unthinkable even a decade or two ago. Let us look briefly at each of the three components of the enterprise. Colleges and universities, of course, provide the education and training of meteorologists and conduct important research that advance the science and underpin some of the innovation. Government agencies provide the foundational data, ranging from upper air soundings to radar and satellite imagery, surface observations, and of course, the government also generates most of the the numerical models that serve as the foundation for all forecasts and life-saving warnings. Of course, they also issue forecasts and warnings for the public and conduct research and drive some innovation. The commercial sector with intense competition between companies, driven by the entrepreneurial spirit, is the prime driver of innovation, as these companies build upon research in other sectors and their own to develop new products and work toward the most effective distribution and best communication of forecasts, as well as better displays, use, and value. For example, our expert team of over 100 meteorologists in State College and Wichita, supported by over 100 IT specialists, collaborate daily, utilizing display and manipulation workstations we developed starting in 1979 and have refined and continually refined over 41 years. So we collect the most comprehensive collection of numerical forecast models and data from public, private, and government sources around the world to best analyze conditions and provide forecasts and warnings to our consumers and users. Our meteorologists work with the talented specialists in IT and graphic displays to ensure our forecasts have the very best capabilities. The forecasters have the best capabilities, the best input, the best data available, and the best displays and so on to effectively do the most effective job of any source. We take great pride in what we do. I'm also proud of our unique culture of creativity, innovation, and continual improvement, which is necessary for AccuWeather and all companies and agencies today that want to be successful because of intense competition and the rapid acceleration of available data and information. Commercial companies such as AccuWeather also, we conduct our own research and development to provide new and improved products and services, in some cases customized for individual businesses, and our forecasts are branded in most cases when you see them on radio, TV, newspaper, on our apps, on our desktop and digital out of home. And sometimes AccuWeather powers the forecast on your favorite device or app, and you're not even aware of because we're behind the scenes, such as with Alexa, Fitbit, Snapchat, and many others. The end result is better, faster, and more useful forecasts and warnings to the public, including passing on official government warnings through our apps and websites. Of course, America's commercial weather industry would not be possible without the public and educational sectors. We complement them and provide many important benefits that other sectors cannot. For decades, we have collaborated with the National Weather Service in numerous ways, such as testifying before Congress in support of its budgets. Recently, for example, we spoke in support of funding for the new high-speed computers that got funded and acquired. We also provide important feedback on model performance to the National Meteorological Center, and we pass on severe weather reports we receive from our clients and from users on our app, which has a Waze-like crowdsourcing function. Many of our meteorologists and team members are actively engaged and contribute to benefit the overall enterprise. For example, here is a list of the professional and government committees AccuWeather people have served on or are currently serving on, both the NOAA, the AMS, and the NWA. Together, our meteorological enterprise, consisting of government, academia, and commercial sectors, give the United States the best and most comprehensive and most actionable weather information available, found anywhere in the world. When I first started attending AMS conferences in 1977, originally as a faculty member, only a handful of the attendees were from the commercial sector. Now the number is approaching a majority, demonstrating the growth of the private sector of meteorology over that 40-year period. Before the era of the internet, weather radar, satellite images, operational numerical models, and weather graphic systems, all forecasters depended on weather teletypes and crude facsimile machines to get their weather information. The hourly observations were anywhere from 5 to 40 minutes old before they came in on a 30 baud teletape. That's 30 bits per second. While the data on the facsimile map was sometimes 1.5 to 3 hours old. The picture you see here is of my brother Barry and I studying a map on the old, wet Alden fax from the 1970s. Later that decade of the 70s, a private sector company called WeatherScan was the first to create an online database. WSI followed, and soon AccuWeather created AccuData. And a few years later, we purchased WeatherScan to improve our offerings and expand our customer base. These databases ingested all the National Weather Service and FAA, that's Federal Aviation Administration data and forecast, sorted it out, and made available whatever specific information a user desired without having to subscribe to and monitor a bank of teletypes and wade through reams of paper. And these databases reconfigured the data and added new displays and new organization, and thereby provided value to business and the public. Surface and upper air maps and soundings, which previously had to be plotted and analyzed by hand, delaying them for anywhere from 10 minutes to several hours, were now available instantaneously. Another benefit of AccuData was the ability to access and view near-time radar, both from the individual sites and as national, regional, and state composites, which combined the data from relevant radars. Prior to that, the only composites that were available were updated every hour or two with data which was often an hour old, while individual radar sites could only be accessed using a special paper fax. They were very small, the resolution was terrible, and you had to pay $1 to $2 in long distance calls to get access to that radar. I'm going to get a glass of water. I'll be back in 1 second. Sorry about that. I thought I had enough water, but anyway. So this is a form I developed to quickly provide details over the phone about a coming snow or ice storm, so our city and county clients could be prepared and fight the storm efficiently. This form, developed in 1967, as you can see, contains very specific details: when the snow would start and end, specific accumulation, road conditions, and many other details that were unavailable to these people that need to make these decisions. The city of Allentown, Pennsylvania signed up for the service for the 1967-68 winter. They were our first client, and we're proud to say they're still our client today. And that's important when you run a business. We pay a lot of attention to our clients. We treat them like gold, and we keep in touch with them and make sure we're meeting their needs. The private sector can trace its roots to a group at Pacific Gas and Electric in the late 1930s. But it really began in the late 1940s and 50s as World War II trained meteorologists left the military and were looking for opportunities. Since that time, the National Weather Service has greatly improved the available data, including high-resolution radar and satellite imagery, more detailed and accurate computer-generated forecast model output, and the quality of its forecasts and warnings. However, it's fair to say that much of the increased value and utility of weather forecasts for the public and business has been driven by commercial weather companies such as AccuWeather. When I founded the company in 1962, there were less than a dozen weather companies. Many of them consisted of only 2 or 3 people, and their forecasts were targeted and specialized for only a handful of industries. At that time, 98% of the forecasts reaching the public came from the US Weather Bureau. Today, 95% of the forecasts used by the public come from commercial weather companies such as AccuWeather. We privatized the practice of weather forecasting without any subsidies and with stiff competition, even from the government itself in the early days. Over the following decades, the field of commercial meteorology grew and increasingly provided specialized services for nearly every type of business, along with greatly expanded offerings to the public through all media, including radio, newspapers, and television. Competition among weather companies and even the National Weather Service was fierce, and they were giving away their products free of charge, and we were charging a fee. And this competition show how intense it was, has been, and is, since the time I started AccuWeather. I've seen over 100 companies start and fail. Even Alden, which dominated the fax business and so on, went bankrupt more than 15 years ago. And over recent decades, meteorologists working in government, university, and commercial weather companies have advanced the science of weather forecasting from general predictions for the next day or two to timely, life-saving warnings, specific hyperlocal minute-by-minute forecasts for the next several hours, highly detailed forecasts for the next several days, and even daily forecasts 90 days out. In the early days of radio and television, most forecasts were actually presented by government meteorologists. In the early 1950s, the Weather Bureau decided that television and radio would be a private sector function, although it was not until 1970 that the Weather Bureau stopped all radio broadcasts. The first commercial TV weather forecast was by Dr. Francis Davis, who served WFIL television channel 6 in Philadelphia from 1947 to 1971. I watched him on television and met him when I was 15, and he put my snowfall measurements on the air and encouraged me. In 1959, he became the first meteorologist to display the AMS television seal. WFIL channel 6 in Philadelphia today became WPVI in 1971. And a year after Francis Davis retired, they were looking for an edge, and they became AccuWeather's first official television client, starting on July 16, 1972. In 2 years, we will be celebrating 50 years of continuous service and partnership with a top-rated Philadelphia ABC-owned television station. You can see we're proud of the relationships we have. Harry Volkman, a meteorologist on WKY television in Oklahoma City, issued the first ever tornado warning in 1952. Many early television weather meteorologists were trained in the military. Non-meteorologists who were already working at various stations as news announcers or entertainers had weather added to their other duties to start with. There were very few actual meteorologists on the air, and that's part of the reason that the AMS seal was developed, in order to point out the people that had a meteorological degree and were in fact qualified. The first commercial meteorologists provided radio broadcasts were in the 1950s. AccuWeather began radio broadcasts in 1971, and we now serve over 800 stations in the United States and Canada. For many years, that's Elliot Abrams, who worked for me for 52 years. I just retired a year ago. For many years, the Weather Bureau provided a map to the Associated Press that they sent out by wire photo to newspapers. We began a newspaper weather service in 1974, designed and provided the original weather map for USA Today in 1982. And we replaced the National Weather Service as a source of the AP maps in 1986 by making them more meaningful to the public, and we still produce the weather maps for the Associated Press today. In fact, AccuWeather now provides complete and fully edited, ready-to-print weather pages directly into the pre-presses for more than 700 newspapers around the country and some outside the United States in different languages. The newspapers don't even edit what we do. They don't even look at it. They leave it all up to us. We deliver it ready for print. The Weather Channel created a phenomenon when it went live in 1982. In fact, they hired away a number of AccuWeather meteorologists and implemented some of the forecasting philosophies and insight we had developed and refined through the 1970s. The fierce competition between the Weather Channel, the Weather Company, and AccuWeather has led to countless innovations over the past several decades. Today, the AccuWeather Channel, launched in 2015, is seen in 24 million homes around the United States. That number will increase to 34 million homes in January and should be in over 40 million homes by the end of next year. Because of the promotion of weather.com on the Weather Channel for decades, they still have more digital users than AccuWeather.com and our apps in the United States, but we are far ahead of them globally. Probably the first use of radar on television was by Harry Volkman, who bought an old Air Force radar in 1956. Another early use of radar images on television weathercast was of the Penn State radar. Back in 1962, Dr. Charles Hosler, who was my thesis advisor, mentor, and later the American Meteorological Society president, took a Polaroid of the radar screen and showed it on WTAJ television in Altoona on a daily weather show. Barron's developed a thriving business by selling radar systems to television stations and foreign governments. Initially, the National Weather Service opposed making radar images available to the public, feeling that people unschooled in its interpretation would be confused. Today, the government's Doppler radar network supplies one of the most useful types of weather data to the public. Television meteorologists use radar to educate the public about, and other weather maps, to educate the public about geography, and radio and television meteorologists taught their audiences about statistics with probability forecasting, a concept now routinely used in sporting events by ESPN and others. It's amazing the impact that meteorologists have had. Commercial weather industry innovations have extended the reach of the Weather Service and ensured faster delivery of official National Weather Service warnings to the public through mobile apps and other digital devices. In AccuWeather's case, innovations have led to more than 150 exclusive patents, and some we license free to the National Weather Service in the interest of public safety. We have partnered with NOAA since 2014 on the Weather Ready Nation initiative as one of its first program ambassadors to help build preparedness and resilience to extreme weather, water, and climate events. As volunteer weather observers, you're all helping to achieve this important goal. We also have partnered with dozens of governmental meteorological services and organizations around the world. And in some cases, we have obtained exclusive access to the models and data from those countries. In return, we credit them in country in our apps, just like we credit the National Weather Service when we pass on those severe weather warnings. When severe weather threatens, seconds count, and we take great pride in delivering those government warnings as fast or faster than any other source to cell phone users around the United States. The most dramatic changes over the decades of how weather information is presented to the public has occurred on television. Meteorologists first introduced radar and satellite imagery, color graphics, localized neighborhood forecasts and mesonettes, new colorized map displays, animations, 3D views, and even virtual reality. The competition between weather companies spurred rapid and dramatic innovation and advances in television presentation. These companies included Color Graphics, Earthwatch, CoCoRaHS, WSI, Weather Graphic Systems, ESD, AccuWeather, Barron's, WeatherBug, and a dozen more. Today, only WSI, Barron's, and AccuWeather remain a significant factor in this business. AccuWeather and our competitors have introduced hundreds of innovations, new forecasting techniques, and a variety of products, patented technological advances, improvements in accuracy and hyperlocalization, better television displays, unique and popular mobile apps, colorful and more meaningful newspaper maps and pages, more lucid and targeted formats, clear communications, ingenuity, and a focus on the potential impact of weather to help people and businesses make the best decisions and keep their families safe. We save lives, protect property, and increase business efficiency and profitability. Advances in communications and cell phone have expanded the timeliness, perceived accuracy, and value of forecasts and warnings through better displays, enhanced wording and communications, and all of that's made them more useful. The public and the entire weather enterprise has greatly benefited from the creativity and ingenuity of these advances. Further, these innovations have educated the public about weather phenomena and weather patterns. As a result, the public knows more about the science of meteorology than any other scientific field. Think about that incredible achievement by this unique enterprise, and many of you are part of it. The first two commercial internet weather sites, AccuWeather.com and Weather.com, began around 1993 with mobile websites and then apps following in the late 1990s. Today, AccuWeather's digital offerings reach billions of people globally with 45 billion data calls into our API each day, 45 billion a day. We have many hundreds of millions of daily users in China, Brazil, Russia, India, Europe, South America, and so on. Our patented and exclusive AccuWeather Minutecast forecast, updated minute by minute, was a major innovation in the field of forecasting precipitation up to 2 hours ahead. Soon, Minutecast will be extended to 4 hours ahead. Research to develop this has been ongoing for the last couple of years. We also introduced the patented AccuWeather Real Field Temperature and the Real Field Shade Temperature, the only patented products that takes into account all the parameters that affect how the atmosphere feels to humans: temperature, humidity, wind, atmospheric density, sunshine intensity, precipitation, and more. Everything that impacts how the weather feels in the sunshine and in the shade. There are copycat feels-like versions, but they do not contain a fraction of what our exclusive patented real field temperature includes. This is part of the scale. In the interest of better communication and public safety, AccuWeather also introduced the Real Impact Scale for hurricanes. We did this 2 years ago, a 6-point scale that we used to better communicate all the potential threats of a hurricane or tropical storm. The widely used Saffir-Simpson scale uses one factor, the highest wind speed, to describe the intensity of storms, and that's usually over the water. But our scale uses a combination of factors, including flooding rains, storm surge, wind speed, and total damage and economic loss, to communicate the overall threat of tropical storms and hurricanes on land, and to people. Our scale has 6 points versus the Saffir-Simpson scale, which is a 5-point scale. That's because not all storms rise to the level of a 1 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. The winds may be short of 75 miles an hour, but they can still cause a great deal of damage from rain, flooding, and so on. So our scale includes a rating of less than 1. On average, of course, more deaths occur from and damage are caused by water impacts, such as flooding, storm surge during a tropical storm rather than by wind. Our scale was designed to provide greater insight into the potential threat so people and business can better understand the threat and make better decisions. Since my time is limited, I can only provide selected highlights about the thousands of commercial sector innovations that have benefited the public, delivered through media and apps, as well as services to every type of business and industry. Here is a snapshot of 50 of them. For example, the Travelers Weather Service introduced the concept of probability of precipitation forecast in its radio forecast in the 1950s. I think also on WTIC television in Connecticut. Although the National Weather Service was not interested in the concept at the time, they did adopt probability forecasting a little over 10 years later. Here are 50 more, and I could put up many more screens. Some of these innovations extended the length of forecasts, some provided greater resolution and timing of events, and others detail. Some provided better presentation and visualization. Some made forecasts more accurate, more localized, more understandable, or more actionable. And some brought the use of weather data and forecast into previously uncharted territory. And changes, improvements, and advancements continue to accelerate. Traditionally, there's been a strong reliance on talented forecasters who apply their experience, education, and knowledge of atmospheric processes and skill in pattern recognition, and even possess a certain amount of intuition. Having been around excellent forecasters my whole life, the best ones also have a unique intensity and focus on forecast and on being right. A transformation has been underway for the last decade or more, and increasingly, we have been transitioning to more of a dependence on computer model output and parameters derived from those models, now including self-learning algorithms. In the future, the trend of depending on computer forecast output and away from human forecasters will accelerate, with algorithm weighting of hundreds of computerized forecast models using artificial intelligence to choose the best output from each forecast source. Combinations of algorithm-based input will vary with the weather parameter, location, seasonality, model performance, and other factors to achieve the greatest accuracy and the best impact, depending on the time period and region of the world and the parameter involved. Over the next several years, the greatest benefit from continually improving weather forecasts are likely to come from the application of forecasts on new technology for better safety and planning, better health, more efficient travel, energy savings, efficiency, and productivity. This has already begun, led by commercial weather companies and spurred by the passion of inspired meteorologists who care deeply about the protection of life and property and improving the health and welfare and the quality of life for everyone. Each of the three sectors of the enterprise faces its own unique challenges, and each requires its own funding. Government sector funding comes from appropriations by Congress as approved by the president, while colleges and universities depend on tuition, research grants, and support for student loans. Commercial companies depend mainly on having profitable products and services that allow them to have dollars to reinvest in the development of new products, innovations, and growth. And in some cases, by raising money from venture capital, which they hope will eventually pay off. This unique three-pronged enterprise should be celebrated as the epitome of a public-private academic partnership that magnifies the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's budget, yielding huge public benefits, including, as I've said, saving tens of thousands of lives, hundreds of billions of dollars in reduced losses, and that will continue to be true over the next few decades. We should all be gratified and privileged to be a part of this magnificent enterprise. Speaking personally, AccuWeather and our nearly 500 team members are extremely proud of the weather forecasts and warnings we issue continuously to help people and their families stay safe and plan better, and help businesses to make better decisions, thereby reducing losses and liability and increasing profitability. We're also very proud of our cooperative relationship with the National Weather Service, which is stronger than ever. Every day, AccuWeather works with the Weather Service to help build a resilient, weather-ready nation and help people and businesses prepare for the impacts of severe weather. We're also grateful for the strong relationship we have with many university meteorology departments, including Penn State, Millersville, Lyndon State, Valparaiso, Purdue, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, University of Oklahoma, and many of the state University of New York campuses, as well as with industry organizations such as the AMS, the National Weather Association, the World Meteorological Organization, and the American Weather and Climate Industry Association. Over my lifetime, I have seen incredible advances in the field of meteorology. As a weather nerd in my teens, I continuously had to defend weather forecasters from criticism and even ridicule. As I told my parents at the time, I would make it my life's objective to play some role in raising the respect and admiration for the important work that weather forecasters do. The condescending attitude toward weather forecasters in the 1950s and 60s has completely changed today. Now, when we forecast a snowstorm, people take us seriously and take action. Stores sell out of bottled water, milk, and bread. We hear from scores of our clients on AccuWeather.com or our free app about how we help them or their families stay safe when dangerous weather threatens. Just last March, after a spate of tornadoes tore through Nashville, Tennessee, a user reached out to us on Twitter to tell us how our app saved his and his girlfriend's life. You can see the tweet he sent to us on the slide. Weather and climate events have an annual impact of trillions of dollars on the global economy and remain top concerns of leaders worldwide. Companies are increasing their proactive use of weather information to analyze their operational data and key performance indicators to find relationships and turn them into predictive analytics at a localized level to reduce their impact and drive improved results. Each sector of the weather enterprise has played and will continue to play an important role, leveraging their respective strengths in a true American spirit of cooperation and competition. The National Weather Service provides the basic data and models. Universities conduct research and train future meteorologists, and the commercial sector, driven by competition among companies and enterprises, leads innovations of forecasts and warnings, hyperlocalization, detailed personalization, presentation, and impact on our health and safety, and a myriad of activities. Undoubtedly, the commercial weather sector is responsible for in excess of 95% of the weather forecast warnings and data consumed by the general public today, whether delivered on television, newspapers, radio, digital signage, or on apps or websites. The widespread adoption has built steady and growing support for the entire meteorological enterprise and has resulted in increased government funding, as well as respect for the field of meteorology that was so elusive in my youth. I'm very pleased that part of my dream has been realized in my lifetime. How many of us get to say that? I am proud of what we've all accomplished together. We've come a long way. Today, our enterprise has weathered many changes and challenges and will continue to advance through the clear recognition that we depend upon each other as parts of the American weather enterprise with the common goal of maximizing benefits to the public. Thank you very much, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much. That was a very wonderful, comprehensive talk. You know, it just is so much fun to see some of the old pictures on there. You know, it's funny, your pictures of you and your brothers in your bedroom. I remember having weather maps up in my bedroom too, and I bet a lot of our viewers have done that over time. And it's really neat to see that out there. You know, I think a lot of our viewers are probably not aware of the innovations that the commercial sector has made in weather. And this is a great presentation. I'm sure a lot of people will view this as we put it in the archives in the future. Some really good stuff on there. We've got a couple questions coming in. Oh, actually, I want to tell you myself, I want to thank you for your app. As I travel the globe, sometimes I've been in places in Central America, I've been in Europe, I've been in Asia, and always love to be able to pull up the AccuWeather app because it actually tells you what's happening there. And a lot of countries don't have that information. So thank you for having that available to us. And
well, thank you for using it. We appreciate it.
It's really been great. Okay, so our founder, Nolan Duskin, he's got a question for you, and I'm going to just read that off. And folks, if you want to type in your questions, we'll try to get some in here in the next 15 minutes or so. So Nolan has a two-part question. First part of his, since its founding, how many young meteorologists got their first job at AccuWeather? And then the second part of that question is, what advice do you offer students going into meteorology to help improve their chances for a successful career?
Two great questions. I don't know the number, but I would think it's been at least 300, maybe 400 that started their career at AccuWeather. Some worked for us for 3 years, some for 10, 15, and amazingly, some have spent their entire lives at AccuWeather. We hired, in the last year and a half, I had 3 retirement dinners, one for Elliot Abrams, who I hired. You know, he helped me actually as an undergraduate part-time. He worked for me for 52 years, and he still does some consulting, but he retired. He was on the radio and did a lot of innovation. We worked together on so many of the original philosophies and processes. Ken Clark, who worked for me for 44 and a half years. He spent 20 or so here. Then he got divorced and married a woman from California, and he wondered if he could work remotely from California. It was a whole new concept then 27 years ago, but we figured it out, and he did, and kept in regular communication through the map discussions with our meteorologists, and then we also had Jim Cantor, who worked for 40 years for AccuWeather. So that was just so gratifying. These people spent their entire career working at AccuWeather. The second part of the question was what?
Okay, the second part was what advice? Let me pull it up here real quick.
Oh yeah, I remember now. Thank you. So, well, the future meteorologists are going to have to be critical thinkers. Obviously, you need to get the basic fundamental understanding of meteorology, which is based, the foundation is math and physics, but there's so many specialties today. It depends what you want to do. I mean, you could be an air pollution specialist. You can be do research in so many different fields. You can be a weather forecaster. You can be a television meteorologist. There's so many different opportunities that are available to you. So if you have some idea what you want to do, then you should tend to take those kind of courses. But you need the basics, because you may change your mind as you maybe become a graduate student or you get a job. But the key thing is be a good communicator. Whether you're in the public eye or not, you always have to convince your team members or contribute. There's so many decisions that are made by groups. So work on your communication skills, your critical thinking skills, and get a diverse education, diverse experience.
Thank you very much for that, answering that. A couple of folks have wanted to know is, are you still taking weather observations? Do you have a home weather station? What type do you have? And have you considered joining our 20,000 folks in CoCoRaHS to take daily precipitation observations?
Well, I have a home weather station. I'm not sure the brand. It's electronic and so on. And because I obviously want to keep touch with what's outside. And of course, I check our app because everything's up to date. So, I can hit the phone very easily and see what's going on outside, but what's going to happen. But I know, I'm fascinated with the weather, but I don't have, I've limited time to do all the things I'd like to do. So I don't think I'm going to join and take the observation each day.
That's fine. John writes, and he wants to know, have you published any books? Do you have any books coming out, or have you had any in the past?
I do have one book I'm just about done. I got to find a publisher, and there are 2 or 3 others that are in various stages of development.
Okay,
So
maybe we can put those on the website when they do get published for folks out there. That would be great. Valerie wants to know, what role does data from citizen scientists like CoCoRaHS here play in your products? Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, well, all the data that you submit, all the observations feed in, we collect it all, and it all feeds into our overall database. And on our apps, we're going to be adding additional mapping capability. And so more and more of that local data will be showing up and available over the next year or so. So keep tuned.
Okay, terrific. Let me see. We got some other ones here. Maggie writes, and she was wondering, you mentioned Harry Volkman, and she was wondering if Harry was the same person that she watched on WGN in Chicago. So he was in Oklahoma at one time. And is that the same gentleman?
It is.
Okay, great. Let's see, we got a couple more questions in here. John writes, where can he get a copy of the exclusive real field temperature guide? How would he go about? Is that on the website?
Just send us an email. I don't know if it's on the site. It probably is, but I'm not sure exactly where. Just email me and I'll make sure you get it.
Okay, great.
And I can have somebody send us so you can include it if you can add it to this so people can, so we'll send you the information. You can share it with everybody.
Okay. And Cindy wants to know, are your apps available to the general public? They can just download those from the Google Play or the Apple Store, I assume.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're free.
Great.
There's a free version. Absolutely can download it. From the store, and it takes a minute, and then you got it.
Well, that's great. Okay, well, I think we'll leave it at that for today. And thank you again so much. We really appreciate taking time out of your busy schedule. This was really great. I remember seeing your presentation at the AMS in January, and took a lot out of that about the commercial sector. And again, thank you today for sharing your time with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Great working with you, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks. Well, folks, as we close out today's program, we want to let you know that our next Weather Talk webinar will be taking place a little over a month on Thursday, December 10th. It will feature Josh Weiss of NOAA's Weather Prediction Center, and he'll be giving a talk on understanding the Weather Prediction Center's winter weather desk. So you'll want to sign up. We'll have registration up for that shortly. And before I forget, when signing off today, please take the survey that'll pop up on your screen. Well, until we meet again, stay safe and stay healthy and have a happy Thanksgiving. That's coming up here shortly. This is Henry Regis for the rest of the CoCoRaHS weather team saying goodbye for now and see you again in December.